Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Let us continue with our tafsir of Surah Al-Baqarah bihawlillahi wa quwwatih. And we are on ayah number 7. قال الله تعالى هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات فأما الذين في قلوبهم زيغ فيتبعون ما تشابه منه ابتغاء الفتنة وابتغاء تأويله وما يعلم تأويله إلا الله والراسخون في العلم يقولون آمنا به كل من عند ربنا وما يذكر إلا أولو الألباب. So the vocabulary, he says he is the one who sent down alayka upon you, O Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, the kitab. This is the Quran. From it he says there are ayat. Ayah means sign, because every ayah of the Quran is a sign of the one who sent it down, meaning it points to Allah Jalla wa Ala. So some are ayat muhkamat. Now muhkam can mean a couple of things. Muhkam means something which is well done. So the whole Quran is well done in terms of its linguistic style, its eloquence, its truthfulness, and how every sentence gets right to the point. There's no bloat and there's no fluff. It's straight to the point. So the whole Quran is muhkam, it is well done. It's not like some kind of a shoddy cowboy job, cutting corners and so on. Rather, it is the opposite. It's a clinical, professional job. The second meaning of muhkam, which is the intended meaning here, means that these ayat are clear in their meaning. There are no two ways about it. It has one interpretation and that's it. Muhkam can also mean the opposite of mansukh, abrogated. So muhkam can mean something which is not abrogated. So there are at least three meanings to the word muhkam, depending on the context. Here, however, as we said before, it is speaking about these ayat which are clear-cut in their meaning. He says they are the of this kitab. The here means asl, the foundations of the book, meaning you refer to these muhkamat when you want to know what is the halal and what is the haram and so on. And he says there are others which are mutashabihat. This can also take a few meanings. Mutashabihat from shibh, meaning to resemble. So the whole Quran resembles each other. How so? In terms of its eloquence, in terms of its truthfulness. Do you not find the stories of different prophets are mentioned in different parts? They resemble each other. So the whole Quran in that respect is mutashabih. It resembles each other. However, that's not the intended meaning here. The intended meaning here is the second meaning of mutashabih, which means unclear, or ayat which could be interpreted this way or that way. So for example, the Christians would say that Allah refers to himself in the Quran as we. That is a plural. So does this not indicate the Trinity? So what they're doing is that they're taking the mutashabih and interpreting it in a way which suits their narrative. But when we look at the word we say it does not mean a plural. Allah is one and singular. When he says قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, say Allah is one and unique. This does not give rise to any second interpretation. Allah is one and unique and that's it. So this is the muhkam, whereas the mutashabih is when he refers to himself as we. But we say that if we combine between all the ayat and look at it as a whole, then we conclude that the word we is a royal we. It is a ta'zeem. Allah Jalla wa Ala is making ta'zeem of his own self, which of course he has the right to do. It does not mean that Allah is indicating to us that he is a plural number. So you see, like this, when we find ourselves with the mutashabihat, we need to look at the mutashabihat in light of the muhkam. Then we make sense of the whole Quran. But as for people of deviancy, they will take the mutashabihat and they will interpret it in a way to buttress their own agenda. Other types of ayat which are mutashabih, where the meaning is unknown or unclear, would be the kayfiyah of the sifat of Allah Jalla wa Ala. We have come across many descriptions of Allah. Now we know what they mean, But what we do not know is how they manifest. That part is mutashabih to us, not the basic meaning itself. Or when he talks about Yawm al-Qiyamah, we do not know when that will be. That is unclear to us. So he says, as for those in whose hearts there is a zayg, which means deviation. So such people follow the mutashabihat. Why? Ibtigha, meaning seeking. Al-fitna. Fitna means trial. It's a broad term. It includes many different things. But here, what it refers to is idlal, which means misguiding others. So in other words, they will use these mutashabihat to justify their deviancy, their bid'ah, and their misguided beliefs, to misguide others. They will say, aha, look, the Quran supports our belief. How can you disagree with us? So they are misguiding others with these shubuhat, specious arguments. This is the fitna spoken of. And he says, وَابْتِغَاءَ تَأْوِيلِهِ, and seeking to ta'wil. This means interpretation. However, in the context, what it means is that they want to interpret this ayah to suit their own madhab. So what happens is that they have their madhab first, their own beliefs first, and then they look for evidence which would support it. Whereas it should be the other way around. Now normally ta'wil simply means tafsir. When you interpret the particular ayah and you say that the ayah means such and such. But the tafsir is based on evidence, and it's based on sound understanding of the Arabic language. As for their ta'wil, meaning the people of bid'ah, this ta'wil is actually tahrif, which is when you interpret an ayah on other than its apparent meaning, without any evidence and without any need to do so. And he says that none knows its ta'wil, meaning the ta'wil of the mutashabih, except Allah. Now most of the early people of this ummah, they would stop at وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَعْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ. So this would mean that no one knows its interpretation except Allah. But if that's the case, then the word ta'wil would not necessarily mean interpretation. The word ta'wil would then mean ma'al, which is how a concept ends up as, or how it will turn out to be. For example, we all know about Yawm al-Qiyamah, but no one knows how it will turn out to be, simply because nobody has experienced it. Allah Jalla wa Ala in Surah Al-A'raf asks, هَلْ يَنظُرُونَ إِلَّا تَأْوِيلًا. Are they waiting just for its ta'wil, meaning the reality or the manifestation of this day? So are they waiting for the manifestation of Yawm al-Qiyamah? So this is the word ta'wil being used. It means the haqiqah, or the manifestation of something. And indeed, no one knows the manifestation except Allah. So the manifestation of Yawm al-Qiyamah, or the attributes of Allah Jalla wa Ala, no one knows it except Allah. So there you would stop and say, وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ. And even the رَاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ do not know the ta'wil. So رَاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ, from rasakha, يَرْسُخُ رَسْخًا فِي شَيْءٍ, means to be deeply rooted or well versed in something. So those who are well versed or deeply rooted in knowledge, not even they know the ta'wil. Rather they say, as the Quran says, آمَنَّا بِهِ كُلٌّ مِّنْ عِنْدِ رَبِّنَا. We believe in it, all of it is from our Rabb. Iman is a key term, we have spoken about this before. As is Rabb, we have spoken about this before. However, it is also possible to make a continuation and not stop at the Lafzul Jalala, Allah. So it would read that no one knows its ta'wil except Allah and the Rasikhuna fil Ilm. But upon that reading, the word ta'wil would not mean ma'al, or the haqiqah, or the manifestation of something. Rather it would mean interpretation, or tafsir. Because Allah knows His tafsir, for sure, but also those who are well grounded in knowledge also know the tafsir. That's why we have books of tafsir written. And he ends by saying that none would yadhakkar, meaning none would take the dhikra, meaning take the remembrance and admonition, except the ulul albab, people of intellect. We mentioned albab being the plural of lub, meaning intellect and understanding. Okay, let's reflect on this ayah. First of all, we see that Allah sends down the Quran. So it means that Allah Jalla wa Ala Himself is high because He sends things down. And the main lesson that we learn from this ayah is that the Quran has muhkamat and mutashabihat. But then the question would be, why? What's the reason for having mutashabihat and muhkamat? Why can't the whole Quran just be muhkam? Well, we can give a few reasons. Number one, we say the whole Quran is muhkam. When you take the mutashabihat and you interpret it in light of the muhkam, then the whole Quran becomes muhkam, meaning it becomes clear in its meaning, and we interpret it properly, the way it was meant to be interpreted. So from that sense, the whole Quran is muhkam. We can also say the whole Quran is mutashabih, in that parts of it resemble each other in terms of its eloquence and linguistic supremacy. Point number two, we say that the Arab, when they speak their Arabic language, they also use muhkamat and mutashabihat. Certain words and sentences they utter are singular in meaning, just straightforward speech, but other times they may use kinayat, which is metonym, and other rhetorical devices, which could be interpreted this way or that way. So the muhkam and mutashabih is something which you usually find in the Arabic language anyway, and seeing as though the Quran came down in the language of the Arab, it will also use muhkam and mutashabihat. So this ought not to be too much of a surprise. And thirdly, we can say it is a fitna, a trial or a test, as Allah Jalla wa Ala throws down many fitan to separate the true mu'min from the fake. And mutashabihat are one of the ways in which you will differentiate between the true mu'min and those who are pretenders. So you separate between the contender from the pretender. So you will be able to tell those people in whose hearts there is a deviancy. You will find them interpreting the mutashabihat in accordance with their own deviated madhab, as in the example we gave with the Christians who use the royal we to try to prove that the Trinity is in the Quran. Or for example, in the previous track we mentioned the Christians of Najran. They said that Allah Himself says that Isa alayhi salam is the word of Allah and a ruh, a spirit from Allah. So they're using that to prove that Isa alayhi salam is divine, and they ignore the muhkamat which says in huwa illa abdun an'amna alayhi. He is only an abd, a slave whom we granted our favor to, and other such ayat which tell us that he is only a human and a slave. He is not divine. We find from this ayah the virtue of those who are grounded in knowledge. So those who are grounded in knowledge, they have a natural ability to understand matters, even without it being taught to them. They have this natural knack, and this comes with experience and much studying, and Allah Jalla wa Ala opening up the doors of knowledge. So such people will not be confused by the mutashabihat. As for those who are flimsy in their knowledge, then they will be confused, and they will end up making wrong interpretations. We also take the important lesson that the more understanding a person has, the more he will be able to receive admonition from the Quran. We may also take that from the characteristics of being well grounded in knowledge is that you know your limits. You do not overstep the mark. You do not try to interpret things that cannot be interpreted, such as how the attributes of Allah manifest. Ayah number 8. رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا بَعْدَ إِذْ هَدَيْتَنَا وَهَبْ لَنَا مِن لَدُنْكَ رَحْمَةً إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْوَهَّابُ. This ayah is a dua which ought to be made by all of us regularly. What is apparent is that this is the dua made by the الراسخون في العلم mentioned in the previous ayah. Remember, in the previous ayah they said آمَنَّا بِهِ كُلٌّ مِّنْ عِنْدِ رَبِّنَا, and in this ayah it continues their speech as they make this dua. We see the word زَيْغ again, or rather its alternate form, رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا. Do not deviate our hearts after you have guided us. وَهَبْ لَنَا, hab from وَهَبَ يَهِبُ, to give, as in to give a gift or to bestow. مِن لَدُنْكَ, from yourself. Rahma. Rahma means every type of goodness and blessing. Indeed, you are the Al-Wahhab, the bestower. Notice the style, Innaka anta. This is for the emphasis that you are the ultimate bestower. We learn an absolutely vital lesson that you do not control your heart. It is Allah alone who controls the heart. Notice how in the dua you say, do not misguide our hearts. Now if you were in control of your heart, there would be no need to make this dua. So always be relying on Allah Jalla wa Ala to guide your heart. We can also take that the focal point is the heart, not the brain. Notice the dua does not say, do not misguide our brain after you guided us. The heart is the focal point. That's where the taqwa is. So you can have people who have a great brain. They are incredibly intelligent, but they are misguided at the same time. We find, just as with any other dua, that we are in need of Allah Jalla wa Ala. If we were not in need of Allah, there would be no point in making any dua. And we also take the name of Allah Al-Wahhab, and that we use His names to make dua with, as this is one of the means of tawassul. And number 9, رَبَّنَا إِنَّكَ جَامِعُ النَّاسِ لِيَوْمٍ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُخْلِفُ الْمِيعَادِ. Again, this continues the dua of the Rasikhuna fil Ilm. They are saying, Rabbana, our Rabb, you are Jami'. From Jama'a yajma'u, to collect. So you will collect the people, liyawmin, on a day about which there is no raib. We spoke about the raib before. Inna Allah la yukhlifu al-mi'ad. Allah does not break His promise. Akhlafa yukhlifu means to break, as in break a promise. Mi'ad, from wa'ada ya'idu, to promise. So mi'ad is a promise. You will also notice in the ayah there is iltifat. When the lafz al-jalala is used, that's the third person singular, and it changed from the third person plural. So reflecting on this ayah, we find that those people who are firmly grounded in knowledge, they know and they recognize that there is a day of judgment about which there is no doubt and no anxiety as to whether it will occur or not. And what follows from that is the qudra of Allah Jalla wa Ala, the ability to be able to give life back to the whole of mankind. One cannot even imagine how many people we are talking about, and to be able to judge all of them. Now to us this seems like a humongous task, but to Allah Jalla wa Ala everything is just as easy as the next. And we also realize something about the characteristics of Allah Jalla wa Ala, in that He never goes back on His promise. And notice this is a characteristic which is negated. And the reason why it's negated is because Allah is the truest in His speech. And He has the highest level of ability, which means He will never go back on His promise. And the promise is that Yawm al-Qiyamah will occur. هذا والله أعلم.